Abduction series. This is following the abduction of Barney and Betty Hill. So, definitely make sure you have listened to part 1. If you have not already, I will have it linked down below. That will be the last video that I have up. So, yes, I hope you enjoy this second part and stay tuned. Alright, so we are picking back up. If you remember at the end of the last video, I talked about how Betty had some dreams that were very vivid and how they had an interview with an astronomer named Walter who believed Betty and Barney's story. So in November of the year 1961, Betty began to think on those vivid dreams that she had back in October again. Those dreams and thoughts of those dreams basically began to consume every thought that she had. Like Betty had said earlier, she had really not told Barney the details of these dreams, just told him that these vivid dreams were about their encounter with the UFO, and that was it. So Betty, instead of bugging Barney about it, decided she was going to kind of write down these dreams that she had experienced as basically a way to cope and kind of get through the anxiety surrounding everything with that. So Betty wrote all of this down. In the dreams, at one point, she and Barney had run into a roadblock while driving away from the UFO initially, and several men or creatures that looked similar to men seemed to surround their car and close in on them. At this point in the dream, Betty lost consciousness, but then was awoken after she was forced by two small men-like creatures to walk through a forest at night. Betty recalled that in the dream, Barney was behind her, walking as well, but he was not awake and seemed to be sleepwalking. Betty wrote that the men-like creatures were rather short and they were only about 5 feet in height. She said that they were wearing matching uniforms and hats that were dark blue, which, if you remember, earlier Barney had claimed they were a glossy black, but blue and black could be easily mistaken for one another. She said that the creatures had very gray skin with large lips that were blue and large noses as well. They also had large black eyes and black hair. After walking through the woods in her dream, Betty was forced to walk up a ramp into a UFO that resembled the one she saw with Barney that night in September. After walking into the aircraft, the men took Barney. They were trying to take him to another area, and Betty began to protest. The creatures apparently had a lead creature, as Betty called it, and the lead creature stepped in and told her that if she and Barney were to be examined together, it would take way longer she really struggled to understand basically everything that he was saying. The creature giving the exam told Betty that he wanted to conduct a few tests to see what the differences were between humans and the alien creatures that were on the craft. Betty was then sat down on a metal chair, and a bright light was shone onto her. The examiner then cut off a lock of Betty's hair before he proceeded to look at her eyes, her ears, her mouth, her teeth, her throat, and then her hands. The examiner cut some of her longer fingernails and kept the clippings. Then the examiner took basically a very dull blade, nothing that hurt, and just scraped some skin cells off of Betty. After this, the examiner apparently stabbed her with a needle through her belly button. Betty said the needle was long and that this part of the exam was extremely painful, but she said the pain stopped as soon as the lead creature stood up and waved his hands in front of her eyes. After this, the examiner left the room, and Betty began to speak to the lead creature. Betty noticed a book nearby, and the leader said that she could take the book back home with her. She had apparently picked it up. Then Betty asked where the creature and their ship had come from, and he pulled out a map that contained a lot of stars. After this, Betty and Barney were brought back into the same room. Several creatures began to take them off the aircraft when the alien creatures got into an argument with themselves. At this point, the leader then told Betty that she could not take the book home that he had previously told her she was fine to do. He said that the other creatures did not want her to remember the encounter that she had with them. Betty told them that no matter what they did to her, she would still remember what happened. After this, Barney and Betty were returned to their car, where the leader told them to wait until the aircraft took off. Barney and Betty did so, and then began to drive home after this. This was everything that Betty had dreamt those 5 nights in a row, and like she said, it was so vivid. So after writing down her dreams, she did not speak of them again. She felt a little bit more at peace. On November the 25th, in the year 1961, 2 other members from the UFO group wanted to interview Barney and Betty. These members claimed that since there was so much missing time from, when Barney and Betty first saw the UFO to when they was under hypnosis, Barney recalled the human-like creatures, and he seemed to be very fearful and very emotional when describing them. Barney then told them that about the strap to the binoculars and how it broke when he was running back to the car after spotting the UFO through the binoculars. He recalled driving very quickly after getting back in the car, when all of a sudden he felt an extreme urge to pull off of the road and drive into the woods. Barney said that after he was driving in the woods, he spotted 6 men-like creatures standing near their car when suddenly the car stalled. The creatures approached their car and told Barney and Betty to not be afraid. Barney described the creatures, and they were basically similar to those in Betty's dream. You know, grayish skin, large nose, large lips, large eyes. Barney did say that the eyes were embedded into his brain. He then claimed that he and Betty were taken onto the UFO, where they were separated and examined. He said that he kept his eyes closed for most of the exam, and that the creatures seemed to be talking in a language that he did not comprehend at all. A few times, though, he felt that they communicated to him through telepathy, and that is probably what he was feeling when he first viewed the UFO through the binoculars and felt them telling him to stand there. After their exams, he said that he and Betty were returned to their car, where they watched the UFO fly off. This was all that Barney was able to recount while under hypnosis. While Betty was under hypnosis, her account was pretty much exactly what she had written down in her dreams, those vivid dreams that she had for 5 nights. Then Betty was also asked under hypnosis to draw a map of the stars that she had seen, basically, that the creature had shown her. And she was able to do that at some point in time, stating that there were trade paths between various stars and certain things. After the hypnosis sessions, Benjamin stated that the UFO story they both told could really have been a fantasy inspired by the dreams Betty had had in October. However, Barney disagreed with this and said that Betty had not given him any details and that they had truly been abducted, since he had not heard any of those details, but they basically had the same story. After the hypnosis sessions as well, both Barney and Betty noticed that they had less anxiety surrounding the abduction. Benjamin even wrote an article about their hypnosis sessions and basically formed the opinion that Betty and Barney basically had a mental episode and they had not been abducted by aliens or a UFO, but that they had a mental break of some sorts. After their hypnosis sessions, Barney and Betty returned to their normal life. biracial couple during a time where this was not really that well accepted. So that's what a lot of people thought. However, I find it odd that they would both have had the same hallucinations. Other people believed that the UFO spotting was simply an aircraft warning beacon that sat atop Cannon Mountain. These people claim that Barney and Betty were very tired after their trip, and they just couldn't tell that it was a warning beacon, and basically that they should not drive while tired. Basically, they were both tired and just saw this warning beacon, thought it was a UFO, and kind of made up the rest of the story out of their exhaustion. Later, in the year 1990, someone else suggested that Barney and Betty's description of the aliens was extremely similar to an alien portrayed on the sci-fi show Outer Limits. An episode with these aliens was first shown